Welcome back to As Thom Tells It. This episode's going to be great because it's legal. I got my buddy here, Steve. How you doing today?
Hey, Tom.
We're going to talk about wills, trusts, probates, Title 19. Are you ready? This guy knows what he's doing. Let's get started. First of all, probate. Kind of explain it?
Sure. Our state constitution gives very specific powers to the probate courts. Probate courts are a local court that are designed to do very specific things. Most people think about when they think about probate, they think about somebody passing away.
Yep, that's a normal thing.
But there's a lot more to it. Probate courts also handle name changes. They handle adoptions. They handle third-party children's matters. So if mom and dad are unable to care for a child and grandma or grandpa wants to step in, they would go to probate court.
Oh, really? That's cool.
They also handle conservatorships. Conservatorship is a fancy name for a substitute decision maker. And what that is you make an application to the probate court to get the permission to be able to make decisions for someone that can't, someone that might be unable to because of illness, maybe they're in a coma or permanently unconscious, and there are important decisions that need to be made, both financially and medically. Probate court also handles certain types of trusts. So if you're a beneficiary of a trust and you don't like what the trustee is doing, or maybe you just want an accounting, you can go to probate court in a lot of cases and ask the court to order an accounting to say, hey, is this being done properly? You can go to probate court for power of attorney. Power of attorney is a document that you or I could sign saying we want somebody else to have the same authority as we do over financial matters. So you can make that power of attorney pretty broad. You know, you can give me power of attorney to handle all of your financial affairs, and tomorrow your bank accounts might be empty.
Now, is that the one that's when you're alive?
Exactly.
Okay.
So you would do this to essentially plan to have somebody help you out while you're still alive, but maybe unable to manage your finances. Maybe you're in short-term rehab and you need to make sure your electric bill gets paid. You do a power of attorney in advance. Somebody can go to the bank, get the check, pay the electric company. Your electric doesn't get shut off, pipes don't burst.
Is this usually a family member?
Oftentimes it's a family member, but it doesn't have to be.
Okay.
And anyone can do these documents, but they have to be done in a very, very specific way. Otherwise, you can run into problems. The bank's not going to, let you come in with, a couple pieces of words scribbled on a napkin. So you really want to make sure that you do it right. But it's very powerful. It can also be very limited, so it doesn't have to be for all of your financial affairs. Let's say you wanted to buy a house and you just couldn't make it to the closing. Rather than risk potentially losing money on interest payments or something else, you could grant power of attorney to somebody else that could be at that closing. So now that person can sign their name.
That would be good for guys that are on military.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And they don't lose it. That's pretty cool.
Absolutely. So it allows people to kind of sub in. But what happens if that power of attorney is doing something wrong? How do you make them account? Where's the check? Because remember, power of attorney is just a document you just sign.
Is this the thing where the parents take the money from the kids that are a movie star?
Not exactly.
Oh, okay.
But it's kind of like that, right? If you gave me power of attorney and I was a bad guy, I could take advantage of the situation. And there's no real checks and balances there.
So is my name or your name on this guy? You're my power of attorney. You can write checks on my behalf.
Mm-hmm.
So do when you set this up, does you and I have to go to the bank so make sure your name is on there?
Once the power of attorney is authorized in a legal document, if you gave me power of attorney, you would not have to go to the bank. I could just go to the bank and make the changes.
And you would pay my bills and da-da-da.
Correct. And as long as I'm a good guy, which I am, you have nothing to worry about. But if there was a bad guy with that power, how do you check? Who do you ask to say, give me an accounting of what you did? You go to probate court.
Okay.
And so the probate court can order these things. And the probate court has very unique powers to really make sure and make people accountable because there's a lot of risk there. Conservatorship that the probate court can also enforce has a lot of similar powers to a power of attorney. The difference is it starts at the court has oversight over it, and it ends at the court. So the whole scenario is watched. You may not want that, you may not need that. But power of attorney is certainly less watched than a conservatorship can be. And as you're planning, doing estate plans, these are different considerations that you want to make.
That's what you help people with? That's what you explain to people, older folks?
Absolutely.
Cool.
And there's a cost difference to it as well. I mean, you could imagine if you wanted to do a single document, come in, do the document, leave with the document, there's a cost to it versus filing with court, going to court regularly, having to file regular accountings. That can be significant and may not be helpful for most people. But yeah, this is absolutely stuff that I do every day.
That's your area of law?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I would say probably about 60 to 70% of my practice is what I call probate. And like I said, it's a broad area. There's a lot of things that probate court can do, but it can cover wills, trusts, decedents' estates. I use the term probate to cover estate planning, even though some folks think that those are different. Elder law is often handled in probate court. There are some pieces of elder law that would fall outside of probate court, but for the most part, a lot of it is focused on the probate court, which is what we want. Because if you think about it, if you or I needed a nursing home, we would go to a nursing home right near our house. I mean, I live in Wallingford, so I would go to a nursing home in Wallingford. If I needed one, or if I needed short-term rehab, I'm going to short-term rehab in Wallingford. I don't want to go I don't want to go out to Bristol or Simsbury or anything. So I would want to stay local. So why would it make sense to have a judge in New Haven, unfamiliar with Wallingford, make decisions about it?
Where do you go, Meriden Court?
No, Wallingford has its own probate court.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there are right around 50 to 60 probate courts all throughout Connecticut. And they're very local, and they're run by...
Town hall, where?
Yeah, town hall.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, you go right into town hall, and you can file right there. We've got some very helpful clerks if anyone ever has questions.
That's good information to know.
We've got a great probate court, great probate judge, and a great set of clerks in town. We're really fortunate, in this area. Whether you're from Wallingford or Meriden or Hamden, North Haven, this general area has some really, really knowledgeable, experienced, and compassionate judges and clerks that just do an amazing job to help people. And that's really what it's about. And that's why we have the courts local, as opposed to going down to New Haven, going through all the metal detectors, getting checked in, and waiting through a list of 50 people. Yeah, no parking.
Or a ticket.
Yeah. It can be a nightmare. So we're lucky to have this system, and not all states are like this, Tom, believe it or not.
Really?
Other states, their probate courts are county courts. They are localized. We were talking about Alaska and Texas a little earlier, and in states like Alaska or Texas, someone could travel for an hour and a half, 2, 3, maybe even more hours just to get to their local probate court. It's funny,
Okay, what about wills? Should everybody have a will?
Short answer, yes.
Okay.
The long answer, you may not ever need it.
What if you own property and stuff like that?
Well, that's when you need one.
Okay. Or you win the lottery.
Right, exactly. So if you pass away and you own nothing, there is nothing for a will, nothing for the will to do. What a will is a simple set of instructions that instructs what will happen with your stuff. And usually that says who's going to be the person that makes sure that your instructions are followed.
Now, what's that person called once you're dead?
That's your executor.
Executor. Yeah. That's after you've passed.
After you've passed.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
The executor, their job is to make sure that the terms of your will are followed. So when you do the will, it kind of sits in a file until you pass. When you pass, that gets brought to probate. And probate has to go through a process of approving the will and enacting powers. So probate will review the will, make sure it's legal. There will be a chance for any of the beneficiaries, whether legal, because if there is no will, you have legal beneficiaries. If there is a will, there may be a list of completely different people in that will. So whoever the beneficiaries are, both legal and in that will, all get notice. They can all come to court and be heard by the judge about what they think should happen. And then the judge makes a decision. I'm going to admit the will. I'm not going to admit the will. And he has to issue a decision on that. Or she has to issue a decision on that. And if the judge admits the will, the judge then says, I'm going to appoint somebody executor. That executor has the powers that are laid out in that will. And they get a certificate from the court, which is almost like a little deputy badge, you know? So they can take that and say and show that to people at the bank, or you know, if you're renting, to the landlord, saying, hey, I'm the executor of the estate. See, here's the proof. And then they have to make sure everything gets handled. And when I say handled, I mean got to figure out whether there's bills that need to get paid, what assets are on hand, taking the assets that are on hand at the time somebody passes, paying the appropriate bills, and then taking what's left over and giving it to the beneficiaries, which is the fun part for the beneficiaries, right?
Now, I got a strange question. If the person dies and leaves the children money,
Mm-hmm.
is there a tax situation there?
It depends. So there's no income tax on inheritance. So it doesn't get reported on like a 1040 or a 1041 like you would with the feds. But there are estate taxes. So if the person who passed away has an estate, last year I think it was 3.6 million. This year I can't remember what the number is, but it's a fairly large number. I think it's close to $11 million, if not more, this year. If you have more than that in Connecticut, then you have to pay estate tax. If you have less than that, you don't owe any estate tax. That's Connecticut. Federally, I believe the limit is about 13 million, or somewhere around there. Again, I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head. But it's again a large number, and if you have more than that, you pay federal estate tax. If you have less than that, you don't. The big difference between the feds and the state of Connecticut is if you don't owe estate tax federally, you don't file anything. That's it. In Connecticut, whether you have $1 or $10 million, you still have to file an estate tax return. There's a taxable return and a non-taxable return. That non-taxable or taxable return is used for the probate court to establish its fee. And so the probate court fee is a percentage, which is a sliding scale type percentage, based on how much that total gross estate is of what is owed for a probate fee. So when everybody talks about avoiding probate, that's the fee they're trying to avoid. Here's the rub on it. Connecticut law says everyone that passes away must file an estate tax return. Must. So regardless if you're following the law, which you should be, you can't escape it. You're paying something. Now, whether or not the probate court will assess fees on different portions of it, that kind of depends on how the assets are laid out, what you have in your name, and what type of estate planning you have done. You can certainly minimize that total number to save on the probate fee, but you can never get rid of it completely.
All right, I've created a family trust.
Mm-hmm.
I die. How's that tied to the will thing, or different?
So it depends. A lot of times what people do is they will take their will and say, the beneficiary of my will is the family trust. Because they want everything that they might have missed or may not have put into the name of the family trust to end up into the family trust.
Okay.
So what happens is the will goes through probate, everything pours from the will into the trust. This is just the most common way. It doesn't mean you have to do it this way, but most commonly this is how it's done. Then the trust has certain terms. And a trust differs very much from a will in that it is a unique type of instruction. It is a living document. It can transcend generations, and it can do different things at different times. I'll give you an example, Tom. If you wanted to say, I want to leave any of my kids that have that attain a bachelor's degree during my lifetime, I want to leave them $10,000. At the time of your will, once it goes through probate, or well, you were using me as the example, so let's pick on me. Sorry, but at the time that it goes through probate, I'm dead, right? So we know that on that date that I died, either my kids have or have not gotten a bachelor's degree. If we change that term just slightly, and instead of saying my lifetime, we said their lifetime.
You can do that?
You can do that.
Wow.
The problem is, it doesn't really work in a will, because at the time that I've died, my kids can still get a bachelor's degree. So now there's $10,000 or more, depending on how many kids I have at the time of my death and how it's apportioned out. But that amount of money needs to somehow live and transcend beyond my estate. So the court may create a trust to make sure that that term happens. And then when the child gets their bachelor's degree, the trust pays out
certain amount or whatever,
the
whatever
amount.
it's.
Right. So that's what a family trust can do. It can transcend a lot of different terms. The most common thing to do is, you have kids that are 20 years old, and they're 20 years old, right? I mean, they're doing what 20-year-olds do. You may not want them, if you were to pass away tomorrow, to get everything you have. You may want to break it up. And that's what most people do. They say 10% at age 21, 25% at age 25, and so on and so forth. And you can break that up as much or as little as you like. You can also make terms for charity. What a lot of folks do is they'll either create a charitable trust or apportion at least part of their estate to go to a charity. And they'll say, this is the amount that we're giving that is to be apportioned for the charitable portion of the trust, and we want all of the income from the principal to pay out to the charity. But we don't want the principal to be paid out, because we want it to be an annuity. We want it to regularly pay out. And you can certainly do that, no problem. Trusts, once you pass away, become irrevocable. They do pay taxes. There's no tax break for the trust. So there are considerations that you really need to balance and know. You got to figure out what you want to do, how you want to do it, and what tools you're going to use to make it happen. It's kind of like if you walked into Stop and Shop went right up to the register, or any grocery store, went right up to the register and said, "Give me some groceries." That worker could certainly give you groceries. Are you going to be allergic to them?
Yeah.
You know? So it's really important to kind of hash out what you're looking for, and what you need. A trust may be the exact thing that will help you get your goal of the perfect estate plan. It may be a complete waste of money. I don't know.
It's unique.
Oh yeah, and these documents really need to be tailored to you individually. And I'm using you because you're here, and why not? But anybody that's doing these, it's not a, hey, let me fill out a form, online and, make it happen. These are very specific. And if you're not having conversations about, this is what I want to do with this is what I want to do with that, this is how much I have here, this is how much I have in this type of account, then you're not really getting what you need.
So you sit down and explain it, even if it takes a couple hours, a lot of folks, right?
Absolutely. I mean, what I typically do is I have a questionnaire. I do a lot electronically. People are busy. And, what's the worst part about going to the doctor other than the shots? It's waiting in that waiting room, right? You're sitting there waiting.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to do that. So I try to, think about what will make things easy for people. And so a lot of times what I'll do is I'll email out a questionnaire to individuals. They'll either email me back with questions or they'll give me a call with questions on them. Fill out the questionnaire, they get it back to me, can drop it off at my office, drop it in the mail, or send it back however they want to do it. And then we create draft documents based on what they're looking for. We send out the drafts, we go back and forth, make whatever changes to make these documents the perfect, tailored estate plan so that, number one, we have people getting exactly what they want, and the documents are going to do exactly what they intend, as opposed to hoping and praying that, their system is going to work.
One more thing. Title 19. Explain.
So Title 19 and Medicaid are essentially the same thing. In Connecticut, it's also a division of Husky. So if you hear the term Husky is a type of Medicaid. It's not Medicare. Medicare is something completely different. 65 and older or disabled, that's your Medicare. We're not talking about that. Medicaid is a state-run insurance program. When you think about young kids that don't have insurance, that's Husky. That's a division of Medicaid. When we talk about Title 19, we're really thinking about the older population. We're thinking about folks that need help maybe in rehab or long-term care, whether that's in the community or in a nursing home. Eventually it catches up to us all, and Title 19 has very, very strict policies. Some people have said it's the ultimate in fairness, because what it does is Title 19 says we will pay for skilled nursing care so long as you meet these requirements. You must have less than $1,600 in total assets. So you need to be pretty indigent. You can only receive a certain amount of income every month. And that changes every couple of years as to what that income is. You can own a vehicle so you can drive back and forth. You can own your own house as long as you're living in it. If you're living in the nursing home or the skilled nursing facility, you're not living in your house, and that's no longer what they call an eligible asset. Title 19 also looks back 5 years, and this is where the problems come in, because they ask for 5 years worth of bank records. Most folks have at least 2 accounts. So that stack of papers can get to be pretty big. And somebody at the state, at the Department of Social Services, has to review those to make sure that no one through that 5-year period has tried to take advantage of the state of Connecticut. In other words, gifted away money. Because if I said, hey, I got really bad news from my doctor, I got to go to a skilled nursing facility tomorrow, let me write you a big check today.
Oh, I've heard of that.
So, it doesn't work. Yeah, it's because it's so they have a 5-year look back to prevent that. I had a woman who had a mental condition, and this is terrible. She was not in her right mind, and she was giving away money out of the ATM over at Walmart, just giving it to people that came in. And she had multiple withdrawals a day, thousands and thousands of dollars. And because it was within that 5-year look back, and she had given money away, which she wasn't supposed to do, she was ineligible, not eligible.
Even though she was...
There was a process that we had to go through because of her mental illness to try and work with the state of Connecticut and get exceptions. It took a significant amount of time, and it can be really, really scary. So if you have somebody that you know is going to need, skilled nursing care, it really makes a lot of sense to have a professional for a couple of reasons. Number one, if there needs to be an argument with the state, you don't want to have it. You want to have somebody that knows the laws on your side. Because if you make that argument, that may be the one and only time you get to make it, and you're done. The other reason you want to have it is because it's a job. And I don't mean, selling ice cream at the beach job. I mean, this is a digging ditches job. It's a lot of work, a lot of paperwork to go through, and you'll get emails or calls or letters from the state of Connecticut saying, I'm missing the October 2017 statement from this bank. And if you're like everybody else, you've got your own job, you got kids, you got all these other things you're worried about, and keeping all of these account records separate is just difficult. And so that's something that we do. We keep everything electronically as well as on paper. So if DSS asks for the October 2017 statement, I can have it to them by the end of the day. The rub on it is they only give you a certain amount of time to respond. If you respond late, your application is denied. Oh. So these are time-sensitive matters where you really need to stay on top of it. And I probably scared you.
No, I wanted this so people can understand. That's why I want to thank you for coming on the show and explaining everything to you. And this is really great to know, but man, you got a job there, buddy.
And
wow.
It's not that scary. Most of the time, there are no problems. It goes smoothly. Maybe a couple hiccups here and there, but it can go smoothly. As long as you plan properly and have the right people on your team, you can get it done really well. So thank you, Thom.
And you're the guy to go to.
If somebody needs me, I'm happy to help.
Steve, I want to thank you very much.
Thanks, Thom.
Welcome to Thom's 2-Minute Tips or Less. Tonight's tip, presentation preparation before your speech, talk, or presentation. I'm going to talk about 6 things you have to have. Number 1, memorize the opening and the closing. You must hook them in the beginning, and you must cause them to do some action at the end. In the middle, it could fluff, but that's okay. Number 2, practice, practice, and more practice. But you're going to do it in 3 different ways. 1, use the mirror. 2, audio. Number 3 is video. That's the one none of us like to do, but you've got to look at it to see all the gestures you're doing, things you don't think you're doing, moving around or making weird faces. Number 3, voice. Use it for different reasons. The tone goes up or down. The volume to make a point or to prove something. Number 4, gestures. They accompany speech and make the speech more interesting. Number 5, eye contact. When you look at your audience, depending on the size of the audience, if you look to your right first and you're going to make a point and talk about a situation, everybody behind the first line thinks you're talking just to them. You say what you have to say, then you move on to the middle people. Talk about a different subject. Stop, turn to the left, and talk to them. That's how you control eye movement, and you can see if your audience and people are paying attention. Don't recite. Today we tell stories. Stories have a lot of meaning, and they are remembered easier by the brain. So if you use these tips, you're going to watch yourself grow and get big. See you at the next tip.